morning, everybody. Good morning, my viewers, and welcome to our Farmers Media. This is where we connect, learn, and grow. I hope you had a great morning. I hope you slept well and woke up very happy. So today we are going to talk about weed implications. But first, before we even start with these kind of weeds, let me take you to our social media accounts. You can always find us live on YouTube at Farmers Media, on Facebook at Farmers Media, on our website www.afarmers.com. Again, this is a farmers where we connect, learn, and grow. Welcome again to the mid-morning show where we find different kinds of topics, different kinds of discussions, where we invite experts to talk about different things. So our topic for today is implication of weeds in modern agriculture. Today we are going to talk generally about weeds. I know many people know about weeds in their farms. There are different types of weeds in different farms, and we all know that weeds are things that are affecting people in agriculture. But first of all, I'm going to define what are weeds. Weeds are unwanted plants that grow in gardens, lawns, and other cultivated areas. We also find that there are weeds that are unwanted, but also there are other types of weeds that are wanted. So in the context of agriculture, weeds are plants that grow in fields alongside crops and compete with them for resources like sunlight, water, and nutrients. So when weeds are grown in when plants are grown in a garden, you find that there are different plants that are unfamiliar to you. They are growing alongside your plants, and you tend to ask yourself, what are these kind of plants? How am I going to manage this kind of plants? Now, those kinds of plants that you didn't plant yourself are weeds. And there are concerns with weeds in modern agriculture, and it includes resource competitions. Weed can outcompete cultivated crops for essential resources, which can lead to reduced yield. Through this competition, you find that the weeds are growing in the middle of your farm. Maybe they are growing the maize or the legumes or any other type of crop that you are planting in your farm. When they are trying to grow, they are trying to outgrow the plants that you have planted. So through this, they are going to compete for nutrients and water and fertilizers. So you see, instead of your crops growing well and utilizing this kind of nutrients that you have supplied to them, they are growing in a way that they are stunted. This is as a result of the competition between the weeds and these kind of plants. And then there is harvest interference. Weeds can interfere with the harvesting of crops, making the process more time consuming and costly, especially when you plant let's say maize. And then you find that there are weeds that are growing in the middle of this kind of crop. So when they are growing, they are preventing this the harvesting becomes very hard for you as a farmer. You find that you try to harvest, but the weeds are on your clothes, they are prickling your skin. So it can be very hard for you to harvest crops because of the weeds. And then there is quality reduction. Weeds can also reduce quality of crops that you are going to harvest. Some weeds can reduce the quality of the harvested crops either by physical contamination or by releasing substances that affect crop growth. Let's say, for example, blackjack. If it happens to grow in your farm, it sticks in plants, it does a lot of damage to your plants, and it does a lot of damage to also to a farmer himself during this kind of harvesting. For example, if you are not using the machinery to harvest these crops. So the weeds can cause you a lot of damage and also can reduce the quality of your crops. And when they tend to mix with your crops and you take them to the market, and the buyers see that these crops are mixed with certain kind of weeds, of course they will reduce the quality of your crops, and also it will lead to contamination of this kind of harvest. So when you find that your harvest is contaminated, a lot of buyers tend to get away. They won't even give it a second chance to buy your crops because they have already seen that it is mixed with unwanted crops. So through that, you can also get a lot of losses because of this kind of weeds. So weeds are dangerous and can affect farmers in various ways. And then there is pest and disease host. Weeds can be host for pests or diseases that can transfer to cultivated crops. So weeds can attract a lot of pests. When these pests enter into these weeds, they tend to transfer from the weed itself to the crops that you are growing. So when they transfer to these crops, they transfer the pest also. So this can be very bad. It can be very challenging to a farmer, because these weeds, these pests are going to eat all your crops. You're going to experience a lot of losses, and was a result of the weeds growing in your crops, in your garden. And then there is increased cost. Farmers may incur higher cost of weed control, either through manual labor or the use of herbicides. After you find that weeds are growing in your farm, they are very many in your farm, you find it hard for you to get rid of all these kind of weeds. So as a farmer, you will tend to buy herbicides or the pesticides, control the pests that are caused by these weeds, and it will incur a lot of losses. Like, you incur a lot of losses, plus you will get a lot of challenges due to the way forward, looking for ways forward of preventing the growth of weeds and the spread of pests and diseases in your garden. So you can also experience a lot of cost, because you'll be buying herbicides each and every week. You'll be buying lots of stuff. You'll be hard picking them. You'll get tired of unpicking weeds. And then there is herbicide resistance. Over reliance on herbicides can lead to development of herbicide resistant weed strains, which are even more challenging to control. So due to these concerns, effective weed management is crucial in modern agriculture to ensure higher yields and quality crops. So you find that after you have applied these herbicides in your farm, you've applied herbicides in your farm so many times, control these kind of weeds, but they are not doing anything. They are still resistant to these kind of herbicides. And the more you spray these herbicides to these crops, the more you are experiencing losses, the more you are wasting money on these kind of things. So it is very crucial for you to ensure that you are removing weeds from your garden. You are applying all the necessary factors into your farm to prevent the growth of weeds. And then, so now we are going to go to economic and environmental implication of weed infestation. But first of all, I'll still remind you again, we are still live on Facebook at Farmers Media, on YouTube at Farmers Media, and you can, if you want to know more about us, you can go to our website at www.farmersmedia.com. This is a Farmers Media. This is where we connect, learn, and grow. Continue watching us. Continue sending in your comments, your questions. We are here for you, and we are here to educate you and to grow with you. So, onto the economic and environmental implication of weed infestation. One of them is, let's delve into economic implication first, and then we will go to environmental implications. So, the first economic implication is reduced crop yields. Weeds compete with crops for resources, leading to reduced harvest and potential financial losses for farmers. So after you find that weeds are outgrowing your farm, they are growing in a way that they are preventing your crops from growing really well. So through that, you find that your crops are not growing really well, they are not doing well. Maybe you've planted maize plantation. You find that the maize the plants are producing is very thin. It is a small maize plant. It is constant. It has a standard growth. So because of these kind of weeds, this happens mostly because the weeds are competing for nutrients, water, and fertilizers with the plants. So due to all these effects, they tend to reduce the crop yields. The crops become non-productive. They produce in low quantities, and through that, a farmer can lose a lot from that. And then there is increased production cost. Farmers need to invest in weeds control methods, and which can include manual labor, machinery, and herbicides. This added cost can significantly impact profit margins. So through increased production cost, you will find that you need to control this kind of weeds. And for you to control weeds, you need various methods. May it be yourself, may it be using machinery or other labor-intensive activities. So when controlling this kind of weeds, you will need machinery, maybe certain machinery that will help you control weeds. So when you use this machinery, you will need money to buy this machinery. You will need labor to operate this machinery in your farm and control weeds. And also, if you decide to handpick them, of course, there are minor accidents that may happen while you handpick these weeds. So this is also another problem. And when you think that I can't approach all this, I can't handpick all these weeds in my farm, let me use machinery. So when you use this machinery, you tend to lose a lot, because first of all, you will pay for that machinery, you will pay for the labor, and then you will pay for everything else that in the process of removing these weeds. So it is it's very costly. And then there is reduced crop quality. Weeds can contaminate crops or reduce their quality, leading to lower market prices. Of course, when you produce low quality crops, you find that people in the market are not really satisfied with what you are bringing to the market. They will look at it and be like, these products are not quality products. Of course, I will give you this amount of money if I know that your products are not quality. I'll just go for another customer and buy their products which are quality. But if your products are quality, then every farmer, every customer outside there will want to buy your crops. So it will, through weeds, if you allow weeds to continue growing in your farm, it will reduce the quality of your crops, hence you're leading to losses. And then there is loss of land value. Persistent weed infestation can reduce the value of agricultural land. Of course, what do you expect when you see that weeds are still growing in your farm, all over your farm, and you're just ignoring, you are ignorant and saying that let them grow, I'll cut them. Every time you're saying I'll cut them, until you keep postponing. And it's not a good thing to postpone things, especially the cutting of weeds. So if you want to remove weeds in your garden, remove them immediately when they are still young, to avoid the competition between your crops and the weeds. So weeds can interfere with your land value, and your land will lose fertility, because when they are growing all over your land, they are draining every nutrient, every fertilizer, every living organism that provide fertility to the soil. So through that, weeds are able to control the land. They are able to control the fertility of your soil, and through that, your soil will lose fertility and end up losing the land value. And then there is trade implications. Certain aggressive weed species can lead to quarantine restriction or trade barriers affecting exports. Of course, there are weeds that are very unwanted, and if people tend to learn that this kind of weeds mostly grow in this particular area, they are growing in this county, and most of the things, it can happen that these aggressive weed species can lead to quarantine restrictions. People may refuse to buy your product, and the government may restrict all the exports from your country to come to another country due to the effect of weeds. And then there is increased harvesting cost, which can interfere with the mechanical harvesting of crops, leading to increased labor and sometimes costs. So if you find that weeds are still growing in your farm, they're interfering with the mechanical harvesting of crops, because machinery needs space for harvesting crops. They need that the plants are well spaced. But you find that when your plants are well spaced, there are weeds growing in between your plants. So through that, it's become very hard for machinery to do its job, because the weeds are there preventing the harvesting of crops. So due to that, it will be very hard for people operating those kind of machinery to harvest crops. Hence, you will be able to increase harvesting cost. Of course, they will demand for you to increase the cost, because they are doing a lot of work in that farm. They are trying to separate between the weeds and the maize plants. So it will be very hard for you to harvest crops using this kind of machinery. Now let's go to environmental implications. One of the environmental implications that weeds cause is biodiversity loss. Dominant weeds can outcompete native species, reducing local biodiversity. This can impact ecosystem by affecting species that rely on native plants. So it can also cause this biodiversity loss. And without biodiversity, then there is nothing in the soil. The soil will become barren, it will become infertile, and through that, your plants will lack fertility. Like, they won't have that fertile soil. They won't be able to coexist in that environment where they are lacking nutrients, they are lacking fertilizers. So it will be very hard for your plant to grow well due to that. And then there is soil degradation. Some weeds, by their growth patterns or through their substances, they release and can contribute to soil erosion or degradation. So I find that there are other ways that are really contributing to these kind of factors, such as soil erosion or degradation, because they are affecting plants in a way that by growing beside the plants, the roots are mixing with the roots of the plants, and maybe the roots of these weeds are very shallow, so they can cause soil erosion very easily, because when it rains, the water may be able to carry away the weeds, combining them with the plants, so it can be dangerous to the plants. Then there is water depletion. Weeds can consume significant amount of water, potentially leading to reduced water availability for crops and other plants. So as I was saying, that weeds are competing with plants to grow. So weeds cannot grow without water, of course. While you are watering your plants, you find that there are weeds growing beside the plant. These weeds are consuming the water that you are giving it to your plant. They are consuming the nutrients that you are giving it to your plant and the fertilizers that you are applying to your plant. So when you continue applying the fertilizers, you continue applying the nutrients and the water in your plants, the weeds are still consuming. So through that, they can deplete all the water in the soil, hence can lead to further soil difficulties. So and then there is chemical pollution. Of course, when you are trying to get rid of weeds, you are using chemicals. So when you use this kind of chemicals, there are other weeds that can become resistant to these chemicals. And the more you are using these chemicals, the more you are destroying your crops, the more you are destroying your land. So over-reliance on herbicides to control weeds can result in chemical runoff, and which can pollute water sources, harm aquatic life, and enter the food chain. So as I was saying earlier, when you put these chemicals in your farm, like you continuously put chemicals in the farm so that you get rid of weeds. So when this happens and the water runoffs happen, the water takes all these chemicals. For example, when it rains or there are floods or something like that, the water is taken to the river sources. And when they are taken to these river sources, remember that people are consuming the water from the river. So when they drink that water, they tend to get this disease, like waterborne diseases. You see that the people are having cholera, they are diarrhea. This is because of the chemicals you are applying to your farms. You can also harm aquatic life. Fish live in water and they depend on oxygen to live also. So when you put these chemicals in your farm, excessive chemicals in your farm, they are taken also to the aquatic, maybe there are lakes nearby or the rivers, and the fish are there. So when you take these, when the chemicals get into this water, they are covering the water surface and depleting the oxygen. You find that the fish are dying and then they are floating on the water. This is because they have lacked oxygen. These chemicals have already swept everything. They have covered the water, hence not allowing oxygen to enter into the water. So it is also bad because they can enter into the food chain of fish. Maybe the insects, for example, fish eat insects. When they land into the water and they are from the farm, the chemicals have been applied there and they tend to run away from the chemicals, and they have already been applied this kind of chemicals. They enter into the water and hence it affects the food chain for the fish. And then we have the resistant weeds. The repeated use of certain herbicides can lead to the evolution of herbicide-resistant weed. Strains can be more difficult and costly to control. I was talking about the moment you are applying the chemicals into your farm. You apply them repeatedly. Every time you see a small weed growing somewhere, you apply chemical. At least use other natural method like hand picking. Of course, I'm going to tell about you natural methods of controlling weeds. But first of all, let me tell you about what really is affecting our environment due to trying to control these weeds using chemicals. So these resistant weeds when they resist these kinds of chemicals, these chemicals lead to evolution of herbicide resistant weed strains. So which can be which can be very costly to control. So when you find that it is very costly, you have no otherwise but to pay a lot of money, and this can lead to losses. And then we have disruption of ecosystem services, which can disrupt the services provided by ecosystems such as water purification, pollination, and soil fertility. So when you are putting weeds there, like when the weeds are growing in your farm, you find that it is difficult for you to control these weeds because they have grown all over your farm. And when some things like, let's say insects, butterflies or bees, when it is pollination time and they want to undergo the pollination, they will mistake the weeds for the plants. So instead of encouraging pollination on the plants, they tend to land on the weeds. And most of the weeds, for example blackjack, they can capture the insect, they can stick on the insect. So when they stick on the insect is unable to move, it's unable to undergo this pollination process. So it can be very difficult, and also it can cause soil infertility. So there are different types of weeds. I've talked about weeds a lot. I've told you about how they are unwanted plants. There are two ways on how people can define weeds. It depends if you are an agriculturalist or you are just someone else. So according to normal people, weeds are unwanted plants which are grown on lawns, which grow on lawns or in cultivated fields. But as agriculturalists, weeds are unwanted plants that are growing unwantedly, like they are completely unwanted. So there are types of weeds and categories of weeds. So categories of weeds, they are broadleaf weeds. These are typically dicotyledonous plants with broad flat leaves. Example include clover and chickweed. So these have wide leaves, and these wide leaves prevent the plants from growing it because it will always hinder the plant from getting a free space. It will always transfer pest from one weed to the plant. And then there are grass weeds. These are monocotyledonous plants with long, slender leaves. And examples include crabgrass, barnyard grass, and foxtail. Of course, we know that people grow grass. There are different people who grow grass, but there are grass that grow that are unwanted. For example, the grass that grow in the fields, different fields. We find that grass is growing everywhere. Those are kind of unwanted grass, but they are planted grass. These are now the grass that can be planted to be used as cover crops. So there is difference between dicotyledonous and monocotyledonous. We find that the monocotyledonous weeds have wide leaves, but the dicotyledonous weeds have narrow leaves. So you find that the dicotyledonous leaves are very bad because these wide leaves, they spread. They are hindering the plants from having their space. They are consuming a lot of nutrients from the plants. So it is very dangerous to have this kind of weeds in your farm. May it be broadleaf weeds or grass weeds. And then we have, most commonly, we find that grass weeds are the main cause of the growth of weeds because we find that they are growing everywhere uncontrollably, and it's very difficult to control this kind of weeds, this kind of grass, because they are consuming a lot of water, they are consuming a lot of nutrients, and they start spreading all over your farm. Again, don't forget to follow us on social media handles, on Facebook at Farmers Media, on YouTube at Farmers Media, on our website at www.afarmersmedia.com. Again, this is a Farmers Media where we connect, learn, and grow. And then another type of grass is sedgeweeds. Third types of weed is sedgeweeds. Sedges can often be mistaken for grasses but have a unique triangular stem. Examples include yellow nutsedge and purple nutsedge. So sedgeweeds they are likely to be grass. Like when you see it, there are other things that you can see and you confuse it to be something else. For example, sedgeweeds, you can confuse sedgeweeds to be grass and just leave it just because you see these are grass. But sedgeweeds can be very harmful because they spread really fast, and one can easily confuse them as grass. And then now let's go to growth habits and life cycles. Weeds can be classified based on their growth habits and life cycles. For example, annuals, these complete their life cycle in one growing season, producing seeds and then dying. They propagate primarily through seeds. Annuals can be summer annuals, which germinate in the spring, grow during the summer, produce seeds in the late summer, fall, and then die with the first fruit. Example, crabgrass. So, growth habits and life cycles of weeds are determined by seasons. There are other cycles that are determined by the seasons. So we find that annuals complete their life cycle in one growing season, and then they produce seeds and then they dry. So when they do this, when these seeds dry, of course the wind carries them away to various parts of the field, and when they get to the other parts of the field, they grow into other weeds. So through this, there is spread of weeds all over your farm. So it is good that when you realize that these kind of weeds are starting to emerge, get rid of them, because when they grow, they will become more resistant to chemicals that you are going to apply to them. And then there is winter annuals. They germinate in the fall, overwinter in a rosette stage. They grow during the spring and then produce seed in late spring, early summer, and then die. For example, chickweed. These are also very dangerous because they are still producing the seeds. They ensure that the seeds are dry, and then the wind carries away the seeds, and the cycles continues. So weeds can have different cycles, and these cycles depends on the seasons, and there is spring, there is winter. And during winter, you find that when summer annuals, this kind of seeds, the summer annuals are growing, they are producing seeds. So they are going into cycle just as the winter annuals. So when they are doing this, they are producing seeds. The seeds is carried away by the wind, and they start growing again. So the cycle continues and continues, just like the cycle of a human being. People are dying and then they are born. They are dying, then they are born, according to the different cultures. Different cultures believe in heaven, others don't believe. You find that the cycles are repeating itself, just like a human life as a cycle, where you are born, you are growing up, and then you die. So it is always like that. There is no there is no reverse. Like you are dying, you come back to life, and then there is nothing like that. It is just that you are born, you grow up, and then you die, just like the weeds. The weeds are they mature, they grow up, they produce seeds, they supply the seed, and then they die. You see, so it is like they are still continuing with generation after generation. They are producing their different generations, and then they are biennials. These take 2 years to complete their life cycles. In the first year, they typically grow vegetatively, producing a rosette. So these kinds of biennials, they grow in after 1 year. So they grow vegetatively, producing a rosette, and then in the second year, they bolt, flower, produce seeds, and then they die. For example, wild carrot. So this can also be harmful because they are growing within a year, they are growing again. So it can be very harmful to farmers. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back with more. Thank you.
Budget is an overview of the costs and incomes of your business. Let's say you want to grow potatoes on half an acre. First, note down all the things you'll need in order to grow your crop and find out how much they cost. For instance, certified potato seeds, 24,000 shillings. Fertilizer, 6,000 shillings. Labor, 3,000 shillings, which gets you to a total cash spend of 33,000 shillings. Say you'll harvest 50 kilogram bag of potato, which you sell at 1,000 shillings each. That gives you total cash earnings of 150,000 shillings. Now, this is a really important part. Work out your profit. Subtract the total cash spent from cash earned. In our potato example, that works out at a profit of 117,000 Kenyan shillings.
Hello, welcome back. Welcome again to Farmers Media. This is where we connect, learn, and grow. Always find us on our social media accounts. We are live on YouTube at Farmers Media. We are live on Facebook at Farmers Media. And click on our website at www.farmersmedia.com. This is Mid-Morning Show, the one and only show that takes us to the deep world of understanding of what really fuels our farms. Welcome again. We were talking about wheat, and our topic today was about the modern wheat in agriculture. And we were still continuing on the types of wheats and how they are growing. We were talking about the annuals, and which we had two types, the summer annuals and the winter annuals. And now we talked about the biennials, the ones that take years to complete their life cycles, 2 years to complete their life cycles. The biennials are not that harmful, are not that very harmful compared to other types of wheats, because they are taking a long period of time to mature. So when they take these 2 years to complete their life, you will have harvested your crops, you will have done everything. So the biennials are not that harmful to the plants compared to other types of weeds. And then we have the perennials. These can live for more than 2 years. You see, the perennials are very dangerous, because just tell me that you're not removing weeds from your farm. Just imagine the effect it can cause for your weeds. You're growing, maybe you're growing the maize. Maybe in your area the maize are germinating for 3 months. You're growing 3 months, and then again another 3 months and another 3 months. You see, the perennials are there. They are always there to compete with your plants. They are always there to compete for nutrients, water, and fertilizers. So they can produce through seeds and often through vegetative means such as rhizomes, stolons, or tubers. Perennials can be simple perennials. There are different types of perennials. There are simple perennials and creeping perennials. So when you hear simple perennials, what do you think? So simple perennials regrow from established grounds or root system each year. For example, dandelion. Of course, everybody knows dandelion. They mostly grow in different farms across the country. So they regrow from established grounds or root system each year. Just imagine, each year you are getting different kinds of perennials in your farm. That means you are going to lose a lot of harvest. You're going to harvest low quality crops, and not every farmer wants to harvest low quality crops. And then the creeping perennials regrow from both seeds and vegetative structures like rhizomes, stolons, or tubers. Example, quadrat or Bermuda grass. So creeping perennials, these can be very harmful because they are growing in both stages. They are growing both as seeds and also during vegetative structures. So these can spread very easily and can affect your plants in various ways. And to the weed identification and monitoring, importance of weed correctly identifying weeds. So now we are going to talk about importance of why we should correctly identify weeds. So one of them is tailored control measure. Different weeds may require specific control methods. Of course, there are different types of weeds, as I said earlier, and each and every weed requires different control method. You can't tell me that you are going to control the perennials and the summer weeds, the summer annual weeds, with the same type of herbicide. It will be very hard for you as a farmer because they have different resistance capabilities, and that will be very hard for you. So by correctly identifying the weed, one can apply the most effective treatment, saving time, effort, and resources. So one of them is tailored control measure. As I said, you should identify. First of all, go to your farm, pick that weed, identify the weed that is mostly dominant in your farm. When you pick that weed and then take it to an expert, or even go to there is an app called Plantix. Take a picture of that weed, take it and then upload it to Plantix. It will take very few seconds for it to reply. It will tell you what type of weeds is that, and which is the most favorable method for you to kill this kind of weeds. So through that, you are able to get rid of your weeds without so much hassle, without so much cost. You are able to apply necessary chemicals that are going to get rid of these weeds instead of guessing around just trying each and every method to control these weeds. But you find that other weeds are very resistant. Instead of responding to these control measures, they continue being dominant. They continue resisting these kind of chemicals or any herbicides you are going to apply onto them. So when you also correctly identify the weed, you can apply the most effective treatment, and then you save your time, your effort, and resources. Because you won't waste your time saying that, I don't know if these weeds are going to work. I don't know when are they going to work. Of course, you know that you've already consulted the experts, you have researched on the type of weed, you've been told what kind of herbicides or chemicals you're going to apply on these weeds. So through that, you're going to save your resources. You won't use a lot of resources. You won't use machinery when harvesting in vain. Of course, you will have a lot of things to do while controlling weeds. And then we have economic savings. Misidentification can lead to the use of inappropriate or excessive herbicides. If you misidentify the weeds, for example, the one I was talking about, the ones that looks like grass, there are different weeds that you can misidentify them for something else. You see a certain type of weed and then you say that is just grass. If you misidentify, then you're going to suffer as a farmer, because first of all, you experience losses because your crops won't have enough water, they won't have enough nutrients. So it is very important for you to keenly observe your farm, keenly observe what type of a weed is that. Make sure that you have researched enough about that weed, and after researching it and identifying the weed, then do the necessary. So correct identification ensures that only required amounts of the right herbicides are used. You won't be able to use excessive herbicides, and hence the cost. You won't have to use a lot of money for you to buy herbicides to control this kind of weeds after you identify that it is the correct weed. So it is good that you identify the weed. Don't misidentify it. Make sure that it is the same weed. And for you to ensure that you are not misidentifying it, look for experts. You can take a screenshot. You can take a picture of the weed and then upload it to Plantix app. It will maybe tell you what type of weed is that and how to control it. And then we have environmental conservation. Over application or incorrect use of herbicides due to misidentification can lead to environmental damage, including water pollution and harm to non-target plants and animals. I've already talked about the water runoff when it happens in your farm and you have applied a lot of chemicals in your farm. Of course, it can get into the river sources, it can get into the lakes, hence polluting the environment generally. It can also pollute the air. Some chemicals smell very funny. They smell, they have that smell that is very irritating. So it can also pollute the air, can pollute the environment, can pollute the water. And then we have prevention of spread. Early and accurate identification can help in preventing the spread of particularly aggressive or invasive weed species before they become larger problem. So for you to continue with your farming activities well, to continue producing enough profit and also supplying quality products to your customers, you have to prevent the spread of this kind of weeds. Because The moment they spread, then there is no going back. Because you can tell me that you have 6 acres of land, the weeds are spread on that land. It includes the crops you have grown there. You can't tell me that you are going to get rid of those kind of weeds in just one day. You'll waste your effort, you'll waste your time, you'll waste a lot of time in that farm trying to control this kind of weed. So I always tell you that prevention is better than cure. So when you see that these weeds are starting to emerge, the moment you identify this weed is growing this particular part of my farm, then make sure that you are getting rid of that weed, because it will cost you a big deal. And then we have herbicide resistant management. Recognizing and identifying weeds that may have developed resistance to certain herbicides is crucial. This allows for a rotation of herbicides, modes of action, and other management strategies to prevent or manage resistance. So also ensure that your herbicides, the weeds are not resisting your herbicides. When you identify that these weeds are still resisting my herbicides, then find another method, find a good method. Don't just continue applying fertilizers over and over again, or not fertilizers, applying the herbicides over and over again, because you are going to pollute the environment first of all, and then you might even end up causing harm to your crops, because you can't tell me that you are going to spray these herbicides every now and then, and you are going to spray them carefully. Of course, they might get into your plant, the plant will suffer out of this. And then we have the understanding growth habits. You have to understand how your crops grow, how these weeds grow. That's like I said, there are other weeds that prefer growing in summer and others are growing in winter. So knowing the specific weeds helps in understanding its life cycle. So when you say that a blackjack is growing a lot in my farm, just know its life cycle. How does it grow? When does it grow? And what does it require for it to grow? So I also have to know the growth habits and also the reproductive method. How do they reproduce? And then which aids in determining the best time and method for control. So when you understand that this particular weed is growing in my farm, let's say the wild carrot, it has been growing in your farm all over. So you identify its cycle. You identify when it started growing. First of all, you identify when it started growing. You know that you know the habits of reproduction for this kind of weed. And then when you understand their life cycle, of course, it will be very easy for you to get rid of this kind of weeds, because first of all, you know when they are growing. You know that during this period of time or during this activity, these weeds are growing. So through that, you'll have your methods ready to get rid of this kind of weeds. And then we have crop safety. Certain herbicides can only be used with specific crops. Of course, there are other herbicides that cannot be used in all the crops. And then misidentifying weeds could lead to the selection of a herbicide that harms the intended crop. So you've already said that this kind of weed is this type. You have identified the weed. You go ahead and buy chemicals. Maybe you always know that this is the chemical for, or the herbicides for getting rid of blackjack. So when you say that, maybe you go back to the field and you find that you are continuing applying this kind of herbicides in these plants, thinking it is blackjack. So the more you apply the herbicide there, the more you are destroying the environment, the more you are creating unfavorable environment for your crops. So it is good that you identify this crop immediately. Be sure that this is the crop. Research on it. Ask others, because you can be able to misidentify, because weeds are very similar. Most of them look similar. So you can be able to ensure that your crops is safe and good. And then there is regulatory compliance. In some regions, there are regulations against certain noxious and invasive weeds. Proper identification ensures compliance with such regulations, avoiding potential penalties. Now, this is where the story comes. Of course, there are other weeds. There is the weed that is popularly known, the weed that is illegal. I know everybody knows that kind of weeds. They call it bangi and soili. So these weeds, I have history with them because there was a farmer in our place who used to grow skuma wiki in his garden, and the weeds started growing. That weed, the illegal weed now, the ban, it started growing in that in her farm. Like it grew in various places in her farm, but she never realized that these plants are actually unwanted plants. She just left them like that. She never destroyed them or did anything concerning them. So it continued spreading, like they grew themselves without even the farmer planting. So the government, the police knew that these plants are unwanted, and they started questioning the mother. But due to they also knew that the woman had no knowledge of such kind of plants. So to ensure that you are not in wrong place at the wrong time, or to ensure that you are not growing the wrong plants, make sure that you are getting rid of any weed that is growing in your farm, because the other weeds are also poisonous. There are people who have consumed weed without knowing that certain types of weeds. There are other weeds that are looking like exactly like skuma wiki. I've seen those, and also there are others that are looking exactly like they are called what? There's this vegetable they love calling terere. I don't know they are calling what, but I've seen the weed that looks exactly like skuma wiki, and a lot of people have consumed that. There's a person, I don't know, it was in the news. There was someone who consumed weed and mistook it for skuma wiki. It resulted to the death of that person. So it is also good that you identify the weeds in your farm. You can consider that the fact that when a weed that is similar to skuma wiki grows in your farm, and you harvest all the skuma wiki with that weed, and then you take them to the market, of course you are going to harm another person. That person will get a stomachache. She might end diarrhea just because she bought something thinking it was skuma wiki. So it is also good to be on the right side of the law. Make sure that you are growing the correct crops at the right time, at the right place, and ensure that you are getting rid of all kind of weeds in your farm. And then there is enhanced monitoring. Identification aids in the establishment of monitoring programs to assess the effectiveness of control measures and make necessary adjustments. So, in essence, correct weed identification is foundational to effective, economical, and environmentally sound weed management. So, it is really good, and I will insist again, it is always good that you identify your weed correctly. Make sure that you are really sure about this weed. It is this type, and this is its name, and this is the herbicide that I'm going to use to kill this kind of weed. So it is always good to identify the weeds. Again, continue watching us live on YouTube at Farmers Media, on Facebook at Farmers Media, and on our website at www.afarmersmedia.com. Make sure, guys, you're still sending in your questions, you're still sending in your comments, because we are here as a Farmers Media to educate you. We are here as a Farmers Media to ensure that you are learning, you are growing. So if you also have any experiences about weeds, maybe you can share on the comment section so that we'll be able to hear from you. Now let's go to methods of monitoring weeds populations in field. One of them is visual surveys. When you hear visual, what comes into your mind? Of course, looking at them. So one of the most common methods, these involve walking or driving through the field at various times during the growing seasons, and visually assessing weed density, distribution, and species composition. This doesn't cost you a lot. It is your eyes you are using. You're not using any machinery. You're not using any chemicals. You're just trying to monitor your farm using your eyes. Like nobody is forced to see something. Of course, it is your choice to look at something. So when you use the use of visual surveys is very good. It's also nice because you are able to see the weeds with your naked eye. If you have a small farm, maybe a small garden, it's very easy for you to spot weeds, and through that you can be able to uproot. But if you also own acres of land, then you can drive through it. You can drive through your farm looking for the weeds, seeing, like, identifying the areas that the weeds have infested. So when you do that, at least it will be easier for you to get rid of this kind of weeds. Because if you identify that this particular part has been infested by weeds, then you know what is your next step. You are going to bring the herbicides and then take charge, control these weeds and get rid of them. And then there is quadrat sampling. This involves placing a square frame of a known size, 1 meter times 1 meter, at random locations in a field and counting or estimating the number of weeds within the frame. This provides a measure of weeds density. Quadrat sampling. I have a long history with this quadrat sampling because we used to practice this quadrat sampling in geography. And we used to use these square frames to look for insects. First of all, we were looking for grasshoppers in the field, and we are using this quadrat sampling where you draw, like, randomly. You draw the square, that square substance. It can be, maybe you have placed the words in a square position. So you draw it randomly, and the way it lands, you look at the area where that square thing has landed, and then you look if there are any grasshoppers there, and then you count them. You will know. So by drawing these in different places randomly, like in different parts of your field, then you'll be able to identify how many insects are in that field. But now, as for the weeds, we are doing now for the weeds. So through this quadrat sampling, you are going to draw this frame, a square frame, randomly. So you just go to your field. Maybe you have a very big field, so it will be very hard for you to know the amount of weeds that are present in your farm. You can't tell me that you are going to start counting them one by one, because you can never finish. So through quadrat sampling, it will make it easier for you to identify the weeds, the amount of weeds that are present in your farm, by drawing the square frame randomly. So you'll be able to count. If I draw this square frame in one part of my field, go to that square frame and then see how many weeds are present there, record. And then draw to another place, record. Draw to another place, record. And then after recording, you compile all your data. Through that, you will be able to identify the amount of weeds that are in your farm. You'll be able to identify the quantity of herbicide that you are going to apply to your farm to avoid the excessive application of herbicides. So it's also good because this provides a measure of weed density. You will know how dense the weeds are in your farm. And then there is transect sampling. A line is drawn across the field and weed population are assessed at regular intervals along the line. This can give insights into weed distribution patterns. This is also good because you can draw a straight line. We've also done this in geography when I was in Form 2, but now that is when I'm starting to see that at least I learned something out of geography, even if I didn't choose geography. So I had learned something. So I've just realized that going to high school was really important because I always thought that it wasn't. But now, during this moment about sampling, I feel educated, I feel motivated because I've come across something that I never knew that it will even apply in my life. Because I was just learning geography because I was saying, let me just learn it for fun purposes. But now that I've come across sampling, it is an interesting topic, and I feel like, I got something from geography. So we have transect sampling. I was saying about whereby you draw a line across the field. So when you draw a straight line across the field, you see across that line what weeds are there, amount of weed, the density of weeds across that line, and then you draw to another area and the other area randomly. So when you do that, you'll be able to identify the weeds that are there, and this can give you insight into weed distribution patterns. You will know how these patterns are, how these weed patterns are, how are they distributed, and through that you'll be able to identify what kind of herbicides am I going to use, the amount of herbicides I'm going to use. Then there is photographic monitoring. Photos are taken at specific points in the field at regular intervals. Over time, this can be used to visually compare weed population and assess changes. So you can also use photography So when you photograph your field at different intervals, maybe you go at the end of your field, photograph it, you just go in the middle, you photograph it, like you photograph it at different intervals. Through this, you'll be able to compare your data in few months. You will know the growth of a plant, how tall have they grown. And then you also know that the weeds, how are they still manifesting? Are they still in this part of the area? Are they been taken care of? So through this, you'll be able to compare your data during application of the herbicides and after application of the herbicides. You will notice that after you've taken photograph before application of the pesticide and after application of the pesticide, you will notice the difference if the herbicide works or if the herbicides did not work. And then there is remote sensing. Advanced technology such as drones equipped with cameras or satellite imagery can be used to monitor larger fields, and this technology can often detect weed infestation that might be missed on the ground. We've been talking about drones for the past 1 week, for the first 2 weeks, and also yesterday on Friday we were talking about drones still. So drones have been a topic of discussion because they are really emerged, and also the satellites. They have been contributing to different activities in agriculture. For example, the use of drones to monitor the fields. In precision agriculture, one of the things that precision agriculture brought is drones. So through the use of drones, you'll be able to monitor your field very well, first of all, because drones have something to detect the weeds. Maybe you've set it in a way that it can detect the weeds. So when you fly it over your crops, you will see the amount of weeds that are in your plants. And one thing about drone is that it can never fail you, because you are seeing literally everything in your farm from above. Like, may it be pests that are infesting your crops, may it be elephants that are getting into your farm. Through drone you can be able to see it. So may it be anything. And by the way, as I mentioned, elephants infesting your farm, there are different ways of getting rid of this kind of elephants, and one way is using garden repellent. Garden repellent is a repellent that it's a sticker that you place in your farm, and it can get rid of the elephants, because when they repel the elephants. So back to where we are talking about the drones. The technology often detects weed, and that is a good thing about drones. So it is important, if you can afford drone, if you have license for it, then it is good that you buy a drone and use it to monitor your farm, especially for farmers with large scale farming. So again, we have the GPS mapping. Using GPS devices, weed patches can be precisely mapped in the field. Over time, these maps can be used to track changes in weed distribution and density. So GPS mapping is also good, because you can be able to track the weeds changes. If they are still increasing, if they are still reducing, then you'll be able to track using this GPS mapping. And then we have soil seed bank analysis. You find that samples of soils are taken from the field and then either subjected to conditions that promote germination or sifted to count weed seeds. That can be a good thing also. This gives an indication of the potential future weed population. So, soil seed bank analysis. Soil seed bank analysis is also another form of controlling weeds, because by taking the samples of soil from different parts of your cell, you're able to sample the seeds, the weed seeds that are present in that particular soil. By sampling this, you will know that this type of weeds are growing in my soil. There are different types. So if you find that this type is dominant, this type of weed is dominant compared to others, then you will know exactly what type of chemicals that you are going to apply to your fields, or type of herbicides that you are going to use to get rid of this kind of weeds. And then you have herbicide efficiency monitoring. So after applying herbicides, regular monitoring can help determine the effectiveness of the treatment and detect any potential herbicide resistant weed population. So it is also good that you are monitoring your field efficiently. You can go once in a while to your field, monitor it, know if your herbicides have really worked. You will also identify that if they are really work, then you will see that the weeds have reduced in your farm, or you will see that the weeds are still growing in your farm. And if you see that they are still growing in your farm, then definitely the herbicide will not work. So it is also good that you are monitoring your field once in a while. And then you have record keeping, maintaining detailed records of weed presence, control measures taken, and their outcomes over the years can help in understanding patterns, predicting future infestation, and refining management strategy. So record keeping is also as important as any other activity that you are practicing in your farm. May it be starting digging your farm, may it be starting uprooting the weeds. So record keeping is also important. Keep records. Maybe you say that on 25th August, the weeds, I applied the herbicides on my weeds. On 1st April, I applied another type of herbicides. When you keep the records like that, it will make you track how these weeds are manifesting. It's also enable you to understand the patterns of these weeds, and also it will make you predict the future infestation, because you will compare the records of this time and the other time. And by comparison, you will identify what time does this weed grow, what does it require, and what season. And after comparing your record, you will come up with a solution. You will be able to predict the future of these weeds. Are they going to grow in next year? Are they not going to grow? So it will also good to keep records always. And then there is community or citizen science. In some regions, farmers and researchers collaborate, sharing information and observation about weed populations. So it is also good to collaborate with farmers and researchers, and it is aiding in a broader and more detailed understanding of weed dynamics. So regular monitoring using combination of these methods can offer a comprehensive view of weed situation in the field. So it is also good that you are sharing your information and observation about your farm to researchers and other citizens. So by doing this, it will create not only a bond between you and other farmers, but it can also offer a solution to you. Since the researchers are able to research on this type of weeds, they will come with answers. They will tell you on ways of controlling this kind of weeds. So it will be a benefit to both you and other farmers, because when you check this kind of weeds, you have observed how they are growing, you observed their life cycle, you already know about them. Then take them to the researcher and tell them about this kind of weed. After the researcher comes up with the solution, at least you'll be able to share with other farmers who have such similar problems or who have that kind of weeds in their farms. And then it is always good to monitor your farm, regularly monitor your farm, see if there are any weeds, and make sure that you are getting rid of them before the pests and diseases attack your farm, or before your plants are depleted out of water, nutrients, and fertilizers. So there are also integrated weed management, integrated weed management is a holistic approach to weed control that combines multiple practices to manage weeds efficiently and sustainably. So instead of relying on a single method like herbicides, integrated weed management incorporates a variety of cultural, mechanical, biological, or chemical tactics to keep weed population in check. So there is a role in sustainable agriculture. One of them is reducing chemical dependence. So that is one of the role of sustainable agriculture. So by integrating various methods like IWM, that is the integrated weed management, it can reduce the reliance on chemical herbicides and also helps in minimizing environmental pollution and the risk of herbicide resistance. So it reduces the chemical dependency. So it is good to use this kind of holistic approaches of weed control, because it combines different kinds of practices. It can be mulching, like the natural and the chemical. So it can be very good. Then we have economic efficiency. It can lead to cost savings in the long run by using a diverse set of strategies. There is a reduced need for costly inputs like herbicides, and crop yields can be protected from or even improved. So by using these integrated weed management practices, you'll be able to save not only on your cost, but also your crop yields are going to continue to grow higher and higher. So we have biodiversity preservation. Diversified weed control strategies can be less disruptive to ecosystem, preserving beneficial organisms like pollinators, predators of pests, and soil microorganisms. There are different types of predators of pests. There are pests that are very beneficial to plants, and also so it can reduce the predators, and we find that it can be less disruptive to ecosystem. And when you use this biological biodiversity preservation, preserve this biodiversity, then it will be very easy for you as a farmer to grow your crops, because your crops will have these beneficial organisms in their soil. Your soil will still remain fertile. Then we have herbicide resistant management. It helps in delaying or managing herbicide resistance by reducing the selective pressure exerted by any single herbicides on weed population. So through these integrated weed management practices, there will be herbicide resistant management, because after identifying the weed, then you already have the solution. Your only solution is to get rid of this pest, and through using the necessary herbicides. And then you have soil health. Many integrated weed management practices like crop rotation or cover cropping can improve soil structure and soil health and fertility. So when you use these practices, crop rotation, we are saying that it will improve the soil health in general. So if you rotate your crops regularly, you're rotating legumes and other type of crops, then your field is going to gain a lot of nutrients. It's going to be fertile to use. It is going to remain fertile. And if you plant also cover crops, then there won't be soil erosion or soil degradation. So it will be very good if you practice these integrated weed management methods. And then there is flexibility. It allows farmers to be adaptable. Farmers are very unadaptive kind of people sometimes, but through this integrated weed management, it can allow farmers to be adaptable. And if one method fails or is less effective, other integrated methods can compensate, ensuring consistent weed control. You find that farmers are consistently putting one type of herbicides on their farm. But with the use of integrated weed methods, then it will be easier for them to also be adaptive to other types of methods of weed control. And then we have environmental protection. By minimizing herbicide runoff, leaching, and drift, integrated weed management contributes to protecting water quality and non-target organisms. So I've already talked about environmental protection, and by using the integrated weed management methods, then it will be very easy for a farmer to conserve the environment. And then we have education and awareness. Integrated weed management encourages farmers to be more observant and knowledgeable about their field. So they have to know about their fields. They have to have this knowledge of how to control these diseases, these pests and diseases that are caused by the weeds. They have to have all this knowledge, and through integrated weed management, they are able to gain this knowledge to be able to control weeds. The biology of weeds and the impact of various management practices can also be found in these integrated weed management methods. So the heightened awareness can lead to better decision making. So after you know that I know well about type of weeds, I know that I'm going to control these weeds through the use of different herbicides. So if you know these, then it will be easier for you as a farmer to control these weeds. Continue watching us. We're still live on Facebook at Farmers Media, on YouTube at Farmers Media, and click on our website for more information about Farmers Media at www.farmersmedia.com. This is again a farmer where we grow, connect, and learn. So we have long-term sustainability. Integrated weed management practices focuses on long-term solutions rather than quick fixes, ensuring that farming remains viable and productive over extended periods. So it is also a long-term thing. When you use integrated weed management, it's also a long-term thing. It will be very sustainable for you as a farmer. It ensures that you as a farmer are getting the necessary resources to continue with your farming practices. Because you can't tell me that you are a farmer and you don't know how to get off weeds and you are still continuing with farming. Then you are doing farming for nothing. Because you are still farming, yes. You are applying all the fertilizers, everything, nutrients, every kind of thing, even water, enough water for your plant. But instead, you are getting the weeds, you are getting that the weeds are growing in your farm even more than your plants. So instead, it is like you are farming for the weeds. But as if you decide that I'm going to use integrated weed management methods, then your farm will have the profits. It will be able to get rid of this kind of weeds. So in essence, the integrated weed management aligns closely with the principle of sustainable agriculture because it emphasizes on balance, diversity, and adaptability, aiming to protect both the environment health of farming systems. So it is good to use this kind of integrated weed management methods. So there are components of integrated weed management. I know most of you are still wondering what are these weed management methods. So I'm going to tell you about the components of integrated weed management. None of the components is we have cultural control methods, and then we have mechanical control methods, and we have biological control methods. But first of all, let me start with the cultural control methods. You know, even in the past, our ancestors used to get rid of kind of weeds. And we find that there are different cultures that are practicing different activities to control weeds. And one of the methods that cultures are still practicing is crop rotation. So changing crops each season disrupt the life cycle of weeds that might be adapted to a particular crop. So crop rotation is something that different cultures are still practicing, including my own culture. People are practicing crop rotation. So it helps disrupt the life cycle of weeds. You know, weeds love spreading in one area. When you find that this is the area that has favorable conditions for us to grow, they continue growing in that particular area. But when you change, the moment you change your crop, there are other weeds that can't grow with other type of crops. So it will break the cycle the moment you're growing these kind of crops. So through the crop rotation, you are able to disrupt the life cycle of weeds. Hence, your crops are growing healthy without any more competition for nutrients, water, or other resources. And then we have cover cropping, growing specific plants that can out-compete weeds, suppress their growth, or reduce weed seed germination. So when you do cover cropping, like maybe you are going to plant grass all over your field before you start planting. Of course, there are other weeds that can't tolerate this. Most weeds can't grow together with planted grass. There are other grass that are cover crops that are very resistant to weeds. So when you plant cover crops, they are going to get rid of all these weeds. And this has been practiced by different cultures. And then we have plant date adjustment. Altering the planting date can give the crop a competitive advantage over the weeds. So you can also alter the dates of growing your plants. For example, you decided that this week I'm going to grow my plants. That is after you prepared your field, you have done everything, you have tilled your field, you applied water. Then you decide that you know what, I'm going to change I'm going to alter the planting season of my plants. So you wait for the weeds to grow first and then you remove all of them. So through that, you have already killed their cycle and they won't be able to grow again. So after getting rid of them, then you will be able to plant your plants. So, and then there is row spacing and plant density. Of course, you have to space your crops in rows. Adjusting this can help crops more effectively compete with weeds. Of course, when you put this row and then you space it with another row, like you put proper space. between the rows. Then there is no way that the weeds are going to compete for anything with their plants, because they will be torn apart. They won't know which crops to compete with. Can they compete with this one or with this one? So through that, they'll end up dying. And then we have competitive crop varieties. Using crop varieties known to be competitive against weeds. You can use these crop varieties. There are different crop varieties that can compete with that can compete against weeds. Like, they are really growing fast. They don't care whether the weeds are there or not. So this crop variety have the ability to absorb nutrients very fast, the fertilizers very fast, and to utilize the available water very fast. So through that, they are competing against the weeds, and the weeds tend to die because they are lacking all these kind of resources. They are unable to compete with their plants. So it is also important for you to grow these competitive crop varieties. So those are some of the cultural practices. And then we have the mechanical control methods. One of them is tillage. Turning over the soil can bury weed seeds, disrupting their ability to germinate. However, excessive tillage can bring deep-seated seeds to the surface. So it is also good to practice tillage. And then we have mowing. That is cutting off the tops of the taller weeds, which can prevent them from producing seeds. So if you find that the weeds are very tall, it will be even more easier for you if you cut them at the top. Because we have seen that different weeds have life cycles. They grow, they dry, they grow up, they produce seeds, and then they dry, and then they supply seeds to other parts of the field. So through that, if you cut the upper part of the field remaining the stem, then it will take long for them to germinate again to produce these seeds and then supply to the rest of the farm. So it is important that you are also cutting these you cut these kind of weeds. That is mowing. And then we have hand weeding. Hand weeding, I'll talk about hand weeding. That is just manual removal of weeds, especially in smaller farm settings or gardens. So if you have a small garden and you feel that the weeds are still spreading, it is very good for you. It will be very necessary for you to remove these weeds. And if you decide that I'm going to use hand weeding, then well and good, because hand weeding doesn't have any effect, especially to the farm. Your crops won't suffer out of chemicals. They won't suffer from other types of herbicides that you're going to use on your farm. So you're just going to uproot. You hand weed them. And then we have mulching. This is the use of organic or inorganic materials to cover the soil surface, preventing weed seed germination and growth. So you can use these organic materials to cover the soil surface. For example, you'd say that I'm going to mix all varieties of different kinds of organic crops so that I'll be able to supply them to my soil. So by covering your soil with these organic and inorganic materials, then it will be easier for you to control the weeds because they can't grow in that particular area. And then we have thermal weeding. This is the use of weed, like heat or flame, to kill weeds. That can be also good. So let's go now to biological control method. This is mostly where most people go wrong, and they don't know really what are the biological control methods, and they tend to confuse between the biological control method and the cultural control method. So the biological control method include predatory insects or animals. So some insects and animals feed on weeds or their seeds, and for instance, certain beetles might feed on specific weed species. So you can use the insects. You can harvest the insects. You can do maybe insect farming. So you introduce this insect to your farm. These insects maybe don't eat the maize plants you have planted. So they tend to eat these weeds. They consume weeds in large quantities. And through that, you're going to get rid of these weeds. And that will also lessen your costs. Like, it will do good to you as a farmer than destroy you as a farmer. And then we have beneficial microorganisms. You know, some fungi and bacteria can attack and kill weed seeds or plants. You find that if you have those kind of fungi or bacteria, especially the biologists, they usually have lots of those. You find that a lot of biologists who are farmers, they have these advantages of having these kind of things. They are able to keep the fungi, they are able to keep the the bacteria. So these bacteria and fungi can kill weeds and plants that are unwanted. So if you want also to kill this kind of weeds, then you can use to kill this kind of weeds, then you can use that kind of biological method. And then we have allelopathy. Yeah, that is so hard for me to pronounce. Anyway, it's allelopathy. Certain plants release chemicals that inhibit the growth of nearby weeds. There are other plants. I've seen some people planting this kind of plants, and I was asking them, why are you planting these seeds in the middle of your gardens? And they are saying, these are just weeds. And I was like, it's a weed, why don't you remove it? It's unwanted. And he was like, no, this kind of plants have their importance. That's why we are planting here. So there are other plants that are producing chemicals that kills the weeds. So you plant those kind of weeds with other weeds, and you find that they are killing the other weeds. And then we have the chemical control methods. We have talked about the cultural, biological, and now we are going to chemical control methods. So one of them is selective herbicides. These target specific weeds without affecting the crop. So you select herbicides if you have already identified the type of weed that is dominantly growing in your farm, and you know that this is the weed. You select a particular herbicide that is only meant to destroy that plant, that weed. Because you find that other type of herbicide, they cannot affect the crop or your plants. So instead, you buy the exact that is affecting the weed. So you supply the herbicide in the weed, and then your crops survives. So that is another selective herbicide. You select the specific herbicide. And then we have non-selective herbicides. These kill or inhibit most plants and are used with caution, typically before planting or in fallow fields. I think that is direct. Guys, consider still watching us. Continue watching me. Continue sending in your questions and your comments, because we are still live on Facebook at Farmers Media. We are still live on YouTube at Farmers Media, on our website www.farmers.com. This is Farmers Media, where we connect, learn, and grow. Now let's continue with the chemical methods of weed control. So we have the pre-emergence herbicides. They are applied to the soil to prevent the germination or early growth of weed seeds. That can be another method of controlling the weed. That is the pre-emergence herbicides. So that is nice, because I think that is the best one so far, according to my opinion. But you can tell me in the comment section which type of method you would like to use during the getting rid of these kind of weeds. So pre-emergence herbicides, whereby you apply the herbicides on the soil first before the weeds emerge. So after applying it, I think it suffocates the weeds or does something, so the weeds are unable to grow, but the crops are growing. And then we have post-emergence herbicides. They are applied after the after the weeds have germinated and are growing. So we have the herbicide rotation, switching herbicides or using mixtures to prevent the development of herbicide-resistant weeds. As I said, that there are other weeds that can resist pesticides. So to avoid this, you can take various herbicides for various weeds, and then you mix them. So after applying to them, they can't know what to resist. They are being applied a lot of chemicals. So for them to resist, they have to identify what type of chemicals. But due to that confusion, they can't resist. So they end up dying. And then we have now cultural weed management. I was talking about cultural weed management, which involve using farming practices that either prevent the emergence of weeds or reduce the ability to compete with crops. So I was talking about crop rotation. I said about crop rotation earlier, and I said that it involves changing the type of crop grown in a particular field from one season or year to the next. And then we have the weed suppression mechanism. Different crops have different growth habits, nutrient needs, and planting schedules. So rotating crops, the consistent condition that some weeds adapt to be disrupted, reducing their competitive advantage. So it is also good to suppress the weeds to ensure that they are not growing completely, they are depleted completely, to avoid that competition from happening. So there is a benefit of crop rotations in this cultural activity. So aside from suppressing weeds, Crop rotation can improve soil health, break pests and disease cycle, and often result in better crop yields. So it is important that you practice crop rotations in your farm to preserve your soil fertility and also break the cycles of pests and diseases. Now we have cover cropping. These are crops planted primarily to manage soil fertility, soil quality, water, weeds, and pests and diseases and biodiversity rather than for harvestable yield. They can also be grown in between main crop season or conjunction with main crops. So the practice of cover cropping is also good because you can really prevent weeds using cover cropping. And then we have now let's go to proper planting techniques to auto-compete weeds. So there are different planting techniques that you can use to auto-compete these weeds, and but I won't tell you right now because we are going to take a short break, and when we are back I'm going to tell you about these proper planting techniques to auto-compete weeds. Again, continue watching us. I'll be back in a few minutes. I'll take a cup of water and then I'll be back. Good afternoon again and welcome to our Farmers Media. Again, this is where we connect, learn and grow. This is a mid-morning show, the one and only show that takes us to the deep understanding of what really fuels our farm. Again, make sure that you are following us on our social media handles at a Farmers Media in Facebook, at a Farmers Media in YouTube, at a Farmers Media in Twitter with a Z. And then make sure you click on our website at www.afarmers.com. Ensure that you are subscribing to our YouTube channel because there is much to come and more to learn. We were talking about the weeds in modern agriculture, on how to manage weeds in modern agriculture being the topic of our day. And I was just continuing about proper planting techniques to how to compete weeds. And first of all, there is optimal planting depth. Planting crops at their optimal soil depth ensures quicker germination and establishment. Ensure that you are planting your crops in the depth that they can handle. You know, other crops can prefer being planted in deep soils, but others want to be planted in shallow soils. So ensure that you are planting them in the optimal depth so that they are able to germinate very easily and very fast. They would have to struggle to penetrate through the soil to the surface. So a strong start allows crops to shed out emerging weeds and utilize water and nutrients more efficiently. So when the crops grow that fast, they will grow faster than the weeds. So it will be very hard for the weeds to continue competing with them for water or other resources. And then there is uniform seedling, uniform distribution of seeds, whether by hand machine, ensure that crops grow evenly across the field. This consistency helps crops from a canopy more rapidly, shading and suppressing weed growth. So there is also uniform seedling. So you distribute weeds uniformly. You can use hand or you can use machines. So that can also be another way of preventing the spread of weeds. And then we have the adjusted plant spacing. Decreasing the space between plants can help them establish a canopy faster, limiting sunlight access for weeds. However, it is crucial to ensure that the spacing does not cause competition between crop plants and themselves. So adjacent plant spacing is also another way of preventing weeds. But I'll advise that make sure that while spacing your crops, I've always encouraged people that to space their crops well. Like there is a space between two plants, very nice space, a space that cannot allow the competition between crops. But if you are also in a position to control the weeds that are rapidly spreading in your farm, then you can ensure that there is close spacing between your plants, but also ensure that they are not competing. Your crops are not again competing for water and nutrients or fertilizers. So when you plant them closely, then they will form a canopy. When they form this canopy, then it will prevent the weeds from growing further because they do not have access to sunlight. So they will die instantly. So you can also adjust the plant spacing. You don't space them far away from each other. And then we have plant density, increasing seedling rates, i.e. the number of seedlings planted per unit area. It can help auto-compete weeds. A denser crop population can effectively suppress weeds by overshadowing them and utilizing available resources more effectively. So when you plant your field more densely, then there is a chance that no weeds will be able to grow in that particular area, because they are being given a certain competition that they can't handle. The weeds are just there, they are growing, yeah, but when they feel that there are other crops that are constantly competing for water, for nutrients, then there is no way that they will continue to grow because the crops are very many compared to the weeds. So instead, they end up dying. So another one is use of competitive crop varieties. Some crops varieties are inherently more competitive against weeds due to their growth habits and also the speed of canopy closure or root structure. By selecting and planting these varieties, farmers can actually suppress weed population. You find that there are other crops that there is no way that the weed can affect them because maybe they have deep roots. They have the roots that are taking water in more compared to the weeds. So if you plant this kind of crops, then it will be very good for you as a farmer because you'll be able to kill all these weeds in an instant without even using so much effort, without using herbicides, without using anything. So it's also good to use these competitive crop varieties. And then we have fast growing varieties. Crops that germinate and grow quickly can overshadow weeds. I have been talking about how weeds can use up to 2 years, others can use 1 year to grow. But when you say that I'm going to grow crops that are growing very fast, the one that can quickly germinate, then there will be no chance of weeds growing. First of all, because the crops have germinated to an extent that they can't compete anymore with the weeds. They are consuming even much water compared to the weeds. So they are also limiting their access to sunlight. So this crop, when they germinate faster, the weeds are still growing, they are still young. So they are able to form a canopy above these weeds. So these weeds are not able to get sunlight. So and through that, they can die. They can die anytime. This gives the crops an advantage, especially in the early growth stages. So when the plant is in an early growth stage and it is a plant that germinates very easily, it is very advantageous for this plant because the weeds have not yet germinated when it is in an early stage. It is growing itself, it is consuming all the nutrients by itself, and through that they are able to grow healthy and also produce more quality yields. And we have the use of seed treatments, treating seeds with fungicides, insecticides, or growth promoting agents can ensure a healthy and vigorous start, enabling crops to outspace and outcompete weeds. So you can also use seed treatments. There are these seeds that are usually given to people by the government. you find that they are coated with certain kind of chemicals. So the use of these chemicals are to prevent the weeds. They are also to make the plant resistant to weeds. So it's also good to treat the seeds before planting them in your field, because you know that growth promoting agents can ensure a healthy and vigorous start, enabling crops to outpace and outcompete emerging weeds. So through this, it can outcompete weeds, and through that, you are getting rid of weeds. So we have proper soil preparation. That is another crucial step that a lot of farmers are not taking seriously. You have to ensure that you are preparing your soil in a way that it is well prepared. It has a seedbed to ensure that good soil there is a good seed to soil contact. It also promotes better germination and early growth. This can be achieved through practices like tilling, leveling, and proper moisture management. So, by incorporating these all planting techniques, it can make a significant difference in our crop's ability to withstand weed pressure. So, it is good to practice all these practices that I've just said. It is good to prepare your soil very well before planting anything else, because while preparing your soil, it is crucial that you understanding everything about your soil, including the organisms that live in your soil, including the nutrients that are available in your soil, so including the weeds that are growing in your soil. So while preparing your soil, make sure that you are getting rid of any obstacle that can prevent your crops from growing well. So now we are going to mechanical weed control. Mechanical weed control involves physical methods to manage or remove weeds. These methods have been used for centuries and are effective when applied correctly. You know, someone can adapt a method and use it against controlling weeds, but you find that it is not working because they are not doing it correctly. They are not using that method correctly. So, some common tools and equipment used during this mechanical weed control are cultivators. The purpose of cultivators is used to stir and aerate the soil in the process of weed control. So, the purpose of cultivators, they are going to aerate the soil, ensure that the soil is well aerated. It has a good water retention capacity. So, through that, the soil is able to receive the seedlings well and also ensure that the crops are growing well. And then there are other types of cultivators. One of them is hand cultivators, small held tools with tines or blades suitable for gardeners on small plots. You find that I think most of you are using that. It is a small tool. You can use them to cultivate the soil, your soil. And then we have the rotary cultivators, powered equipment with rotating blades to break up soil and uproot weeds. So you find that there are other soil particles that are compacted. These ones are always big. For example, when you are digging your shamba and you find that they are big compacted soil particles, these are always not good for the soil. So it is good to use this kind of rotary cultivators to ensure that you are breaking these soil particles, the bigger ones, to ensure that your plants are growing well. They are penetrating the soil without obstacles, and also it kills the weeds. And then we have row cultivators. They are designed to cultivate between rows of crops without damaging the plants. So they are these row cultivators. Of course, they are, when you say row cultivators, they are meant for the rows. So through the use of row cultivators, you are able to cultivate between the rows of your crops, and you won't damage a single crop because it is always meant for row cultivators. I say that you won't damage any of your crop. That is, if you are using the method correctly. But if you are not using the method correctly, then there is no way that you are going to tell me that your crops are going to survive. And then we have the usage. Cultivators uproot young weeds. They disrupt the germination of weed seeds and bury emerging weed seedling. So it is very good to use cultivators. If you can afford them, if you have them, then make use of them. Make sure that you are breaking these weed cycles. And then we have the harrows. They are used to break clods, harvest grass, and uproot weeds. So clods are used to uproot definitely weeds. And then there are other types of these harrows. One of them is spring tooth or tine harrows. They feature flexible tines that scratch the soil surface, uprooting young weeds. So they are mainly meant to uproot these young weeds. And you know, young weeds are another type of activity that can hinder your crops from growing, because when they are young, they are consuming even more water compared when they are fully grown. So we have the disc harrows. It consists of circular blades that cut and turn the soil, burying weeds and weed seeds. And then we have the chain harrows, a mesh of chains dragged over the soil, effective for seed bed preparation and weed control in pasture. So when you are preparing your seed bed, you can use these chain harrows because harrowing is best suited for fields, for open fields before crop emergence or between rows when crops are taller. So you can use this kind of harrowing. You can use harrowing method, especially when you are planting your crops in rows. Maybe you have planted the beans or the maize, you have planted them in rows, and you've realized that the weeds are growing between the rows, then you can use harrowing methods. And then we have the flame weeders. The purpose of the flame weeders is it is used to heat to kill. They use heat to kill weeds. So you can use this. And then mechanism. These devices burn or cook the weeds. That is interesting. So they don't necessarily incinerate the weed, but provide enough heat to rupture plant cells, causing them to wilt and die. So that is also another type of flame weeders. Their mechanism is mainly to burn the seeds, and then they ensure that the weeds are exploding, hence controlling the spread of weeds. So there are hose. That is what most farmers use. I, as a farmer, I use hose. So a hoe. So purpose: manual removal or cutting of weeds. That is the purpose of hoe. And then types: they are traditional garden hoe used to chop down weeds. Of course, many people have this kind of traditional garden hoe that they are using to chop the weeds. And then they have the scalpel or stirrup hoe. The features a loop blade that moves back and forth below the soil surface, cutting off the weeds. So scaffold stirrup is also used during the gardening, and then effective for garden plots or smaller farm areas, and works best when weeds are young. So they can use this. Benefits of mechanical weed control methods: first of all, there is reduced chemical use. So when you use mechanical weed control method, there is definitely no way that you are going to use chemicals, because even if you use chemicals, then you use in a limited amount, because these mechanical methods are even more effective compared to chemical, because they are not polluting the environment. They are there to provide the plants with healthy habitats. So a mechanical method reduces the reliance on herbicides. You can't be able to expend a lot of money using buying herbicides. At least there will be a reduced amount of money compared to how you used to use chemical methods. So it also decreases potential environment pollution and health risks. Of course, through the use of this chemical, you are going to reduce the health risk by selling plants affected by herbicides to other farmers, or by polluting the environment by the water runoffs, etc. And then there is immediate results. Many mechanical methods offer immediate results, as weeds are uprooted or destroyed on the spots. Yeah, you can use these when you use mechanical methods, you are on the spot. You have to see the result immediately, because when you uproot them, then there is no way that they are going to grow over a day, like overnight. They have to take years for them to grow again. So there is immediate results, and then no herbicides resistance. It will be very nice, since you're not using herbicides. They won't be able to resist to any herbicides, because first of all, you are not using the herbicides. You are using the mechanical method. And then there is soil aeration. Tools like cultivators and harrows aerate the soil, improving its structure and water infiltration. So it ensures that there is soil aeration, and these contribute to plant growth in a way that they are healthy. And through this, you are able to produce quality crops. Crops that when you take it to the market, you'll be very proud to sell to your customers, and you'll attract more and more customers. And then it is cost efficient. Over time, relying on mechanical methods can be cost effective, especially when considering the rising cost of herbicides. You find that nowadays, even as we talk right now, herbicides have really increased. The prices have really increased, and it is very costly. So when you constantly buy these herbicides and you find that your crops are still resistant to these herbicides, you are going to incur a lot of losses first of all, and then you are going to use a lot of money while trying to get rid of these herbicides. So it is cost efficient when you use mechanical methods, because you are only buying your machine and then you are staying with it. You will use it over and over again the moment you need it. So it is also good to use mechanical method. And then it is suitable for organic farming. Mechanical methods are compatible with organic farming standard, which often limit or prohibit synthetic herbicide use. So it is very suitable for organic farming. And then it is flexible. Tools like hoes or hand cultivators are adaptable. Of course, if you see that you're using hand cultivators or you're using hoes, then it will be very nice. That is a djembe. It is very nice because it is something that is flexible. It is something that is used by majority of farmers across the continent and across the world. So use of djembes are also another way of a mechanical method. And then we have limitation of mechanical weed control method. Of course, everything comes with advantages and disadvantages. And one of the limitation of mechanical method is labor intensive, especially with manual tools. And mechanical control can be time consuming and physically demanding. Of course, you have to be physical enough for you to dig a shamba using mechanical methods. So first of all, it is time consuming and it requires a lot of labor. So that is another disadvantage of using mechanical method. And then we have potential crop damage. If not done carefully, tools like cultivators can damage crops. Of course, not every time that one is careful, accidents do happen in farms. So if you use these types of mechanical weed control methods carelessly, then you'll end up hurting your crops, especially when you're using a djembe to uproot the weeds or to dig onto the weeds. Then you're likely to hurt a lot of crops. Then there is incomplete removal. Some perennial weeds can regrow from remaining roots or rhizomes after mechanical removal. You find that you have already cut the weeds. Yes, you have cut the stems. For example, you did the practice of cutting the upper part of the plant. So when you cut the upper part of the plant, the remaining one continues to grow. So it can cause that they are still growing. The more you are cutting them, the more they are growing. So it can also cause the incomplete removal. And then we have soil disruption. Frequent use of some mechanical tools like tillage equipment can disrupt soil structure, of course. You can't tell me that you are tilling your land over and over again and it is not disrupting anything in your land. And then we have fuel and equipment cost. Of course, while they might reduce herbicides cost, mechanized tool require fuel maintenance and initial investment. Of course, there is no tool. For example, you decide to use a tractor. It requires fuels. It requires fuel. So for you to continue using this tractor, you have to buy fuel. So it is also another labor-intensive method. It is costly. So it also has its disadvantage. And then I'll also go through biological weed control very fast, and because time is not on our side. So there are weed seed predators. Certain insects feed on weed seeds, reducing their population in the soil. So there are other insects that can feed on the weeds, and then you have herbivorous insects such as herbivorous insects. Some insects, when introduced, feed specifically on certain weed species. So you can introduce certain insects for specific weeds. So through that, you'll be able to get rid of weeds very fast. And then you have the pathogens such as fungi. Certain fungi can infect and kill weeds. They are fungi that you can introduce into your farm and it instantly kills your weeds. Then there is bacteria. Some bacteria strains can cause diseases in specific weeds, suppressing their growth. So you can also use bacteria or bioherbicides. You can also use animals, but that also has an advantage and disadvantage. So grazing animals, livestock like sheep, goats, and cows can be managed to graze on certain weed infested area, reducing weed density and seed production. Of course, you can direct your animals. For example, there is a field that you want to you want to start plowing and you see that there is a lot of weed growing there, and you know that that type of weed cows can graze, they can take that weed, and also the goat, the sheep. Maybe you can take your goats and sheep inside that farm, and they'll be able to eat those kind of foods. So through that, you'll be able to get rid of this kind of weeds. And then we have fish. Grass carp, a fish species, has been used in aquatic setting to feed on certain aquatic weeds, controlling their spread. There are other type of fish that feed on weeds, and that can be used during maybe for the aquatic farmers. And then we have birds. Some birds like ducks feed on certain weeds and can be beneficial in rice paddies and settings. Guys, continue watching us. We're still live on Facebook at Farmers Media, on YouTube at Farmers Media, and on our website www.farmers.com. This is a Farmers Media where we connect, learn, and grow. Again, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for continuing watching us. Thank you for your comments, if there are any. Thank you for dedicating your time onto watching this show, and I hope you learned something out of this show. I'd like to thank our director, and I'd like to thank our director Dottie, and our producer Magdalene Mary, and thank you again. Thank you. It was an amazing session, and I hope you learned something out of this. Again, I've been your host Regina, but before I finish this show, let's go into our proverbs of the day, because we are wise people, and every day before we finish the show we must end with a proverb. And today's proverbs is 1 man's weeds is another man's wildflower. 1 man's weed is another man's wildflower. So what does this proverb mean? So this proverb underscores the idea that perceptions can differ widely from one person to another. In agriculture, while some might see a plant as a weed and a nuisance, others might see it as a beneficial or even beautiful plant. So the saying can also be extended beyond agriculture, suggests that what is considered undesirable or out of place in one context must be valued in another. So you might consider that this weed is something that I don't need in my farm, but another farmer requires that weed for something else. So that is why we say one man's weed is another man's wildflower. Again, thank you so much. So I've been your host or presenter, Regina I. Until next time, have a lovely day.